But first, last week I heard an extremely disturbing story about a woman who'd made the comment during a discussion at work that all lives matter. This woman is one of the most caring, loving and progressive-minded people you will find, yet for simply saying all lives matter, she has been disciplined at her workplace and reprimanded by her colleagues for using a supposedly racist phrase. And then, wait for it, during a Zoom conference, she was deliberately muted, switched off, silenced. No explanation was given, but the implication was clear. She'd been, as they say, cancelled. I heard the story from the woman this week as I was preparing our Sky News special documentary on cancel culture, which screens tonight here on Sky at 8:30. Whatever you do, make sure you are in front of your television at 8:29 on the dot. As part of the program, I spoke to people who'd been through the absolute hell of being cancelled. If you're in the thick of it, it can be truly terrifying and deeply unsettling. As part of the show, I interviewed the great Douglas Murray about what tools people need to fight back against cancel culture. Douglas Murray is the author of the brilliant book The Madness of Crowds, in which he exposes the rotten ideology of identity politics and how it has led to this grotesque authoritarianism we are now seeing, with reminiscent of historical periods of extreme censorship such as McCarthyism or even the Salem witch trials, where they'd dunk you in the pond, and if you drowned, it meant you were innocent. But if you didn't drown, it meant you were guilty, you were a witch, so they burnt you at the stake. Anyway, it's pretty much the same now with racism, lose-lose. If you say you're not a racist, it means you must be a racist but don't realise it. Or if you say all lives matter, which they all do, then you're a racist. Tonight on the show, Douglas specifically addresses cancel culture, but his is such a great mind that I got greedy when I had him in the studio in London, and I also quizzed him specifically about All Lives Matter, exclusively for you this morning here on Outsiders.
When Black Lives Matter started to be said more, some people very reasonably said, no, well, you know, all lives matter. And they were told from that point on, no, that's to eradicate the importance of the phrase Black Lives Matter. And in the last 6 years, that idea that saying all lives matter not just negates the importance of saying Black Lives Matter, but actually opposes the idea that Black Lives Matter, has caught on.
And then he added this terrific insight.
Find me the people saying Black lives don't matter. So this is a clever trick we need to be aware of. They say Black Lives Matter, and anything that not just opposes it, but criticises, not just that statement, but any statement from the movement that says Black Lives Matter, and you must be saying that Black lives don't matter. This is a horrible, nasty game that these activists are playing.
Indeed. Apply the same logic here in Australia and ask the Black Lives Matter demonstrators the same question. Who in Australia doesn't think Black Lives Matter? Certainly not the Australian public, predominantly white, who spend billions of dollars on Indigenous welfare year in, year out, who have said sorry countless times, who voted overwhelmingly in a referendum to advance Indigenous political rights, who perform countless ceremonies of acknowledgement, fly Aboriginal flags off our most famous landmarks, walk across bridges in solidarity, have corporations flying the flags and talking, and more importantly, bringing Indigenous employees in and getting them working in the economy, who change laws and rights of access when we're asked to, and we are rightly proud of our fabulous Indigenous celebrities, sports people, politicians and artists. Yes, there is dreadful suffering and disadvantage in Indigenous communities, but that is why all Australians are committed, through their taxes and through their actions, to improving Indigenous opportunity and Indigenous prosperity, both of which are critical, because every Australian life matters, every black life, every white life, and every shade in between. All lives do matter. But actions speak louder than words, and there is one group who do, through their actions, suggest that maybe some lives don't matter quite so much to them after all. In particular, Aboriginal lives and the lives of the elderly. That is the group who have some potential physical connection with remote Indigenous communities, or the elderly who are yet again prepared to go on marches and demonstrations where they run the unacceptable risk and the real danger of spreading the coronavirus into Indigenous communities, among the most vulnerable communities in Australia or amongst the elderly. One of the organisers claims that at the end of the day, this is our land and we should be free to walk on our land. There is the risk. Meanwhile, speaking of people being cancelled for racism, someone who certainly does deserve to be cancelled and has been cancelled because he is, if his social media postings are anything to go by, a genuine racist, not a made-up one, who says genuinely disgusting and racist things, not made-up phrases. That is Heshmat Khalifa, the British leader of Islamic Relief, one of the largest Muslim charities in the world with an annual income of around $1 billion, who has had to quit the charity after having been caught by the Times in the UK posting the most vile and repulsive anti-Semitic posts on social media. I won't dignify them by repeating them. They are grotesque. Mr. Khalifa was also apparently at one point the chairman of Islamic Relief in Australia. He has also described the murderers and anti-Semites of Hamas as the purest resistance movement in modern history. Good riddance. But weirdly, I could find no mention of this billion-dollar racist anywhere on the ABC. Strange. Nor could I find any mention of this genuinely racist rant, clearly a product of our modern, progressive, Western left-wing academia, delivered by a speaker at a recent London Black Lives Matter rally.
We need to address the fact that, all of these groups of people, the issues they face, it all comes from the same people, white men. So we need to get rid of them.
He went on to say that basically white people were the root of all evil and white people should be removed, should be got rid of, and then he laughed at that idea. Of course, no one would ever dream of cancelling him because he's the right identity politics.